All right, let's check to make sure that we're live on YouTube. There's a little bit of a delay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to CHAS and Friends. And today I have with me the lovely Johanna. Sorry, I'm gonna muddle my words there.
No worries.
I'm sure all of you are probably familiar with Johanna. She's been around BookTube for about a year and a half now, right, Johanna?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, and you've just blossomed really fast, and your YouTube channel's become really popular with good reason. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So, welcome everybody. We're just gonna have a lovely chat today. I'm gonna let Johanna tell us a little bit about her and about her channel, and then we're just gonna chat about whatever here.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Johanna, and most of my channel mostly focuses on fantasy. I do read some other genres as well now and then, just like Chaz does, but mostly I just focus on fantasy. And sometimes I like to do book topic discussions as well, just on various ideas related to the book community or things like that. So that also interests me. But I'm very excited to be here with Chaz. I am a huge admirer of your channel, Chaz, and
Thank you.
I'm expecting to have a great discussion with you.
Yeah, me too. It'll be a lot of fun. And if those of you watching are not subscribed to Joanna, make sure you do go ahead and subscribe and check out her channel and things like that. We've got Chadia here. I'm thinking I pronounced that right. I might not be. It might be Chadia. So forgive me if I mispronounce.
I love the name in
I
either case.
know. Yeah, that's a great name. I like the thumb the pic there too.
Oh,
That's
I love that
awesome.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning.
And Ursi's here. Thank you. Good morning, Ursi.
RJ,
It's
hello.
just okay, Chadia. It's the second one. Okay, good. Thank you. RJ, welcome. Yeah,
RJ.
everybody's excited to see you here, Joanna.
Thanks.
You mentioned that you enjoy topic videos, and I've watched a lot of great topic videos from you. I really especially enjoyed this most recent one though on visualizing when you're reading. I thought that was just a phenomenal video, and it really resonated with me. Um, what what was it that initially prompted you to to talk about that topic?
Yeah, that video has kind of blown up on my channel.
Yeah.
I was really surprised because a lot of people, first of all, I do love book topic videos. I watch a lot of those, especially on Bookborn. As soon as she
Mhm.
posts one, I instantly click on it. And I've
Mhm.
heard a lot of people from other channels say, I know Brittany from Books with Brittany and I once talked about how those kind of topic videos, we love those, but apparently they don't get a lot of views, or I've heard that be the case. And I've just done them anyway because I enjoy them.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, so I was really surprised that this last one I did this last week got so many views and comments. But what made me interested in the topic is that I I think it wasn't until this last year that I started hearing more and more people say, I don't visualize what I read, or I'm not a visual reader, and talk about how they don't really like heavy description in books. I kept hearing more and more people say that. And it really surprised me because my earliest experiences of falling in love with reading were just feeling totally immersed and swept away in a story and just forgetting I was even in the room or my name, anything. And so until I closed the book, and it would almost have be disorienting for me because the visual part of that experience, all the other sensory experiences as well, were so vivid to me. And
Mhm.
I thought everyone had that experience. I thought everybody's experiencing this when they read, or I thought everybody needs to read so they can have this experience. So that was always my thought process behind why I loved books. And it was also a huge motivator for me to get back into reading as an adult. And I was always hard on myself for going through reading slumps and just missing that experience. And so when I got back into reading and started to fall in love with it again, it didn't even occur to me until I started hearing people say that they don't visualize what they read, that I realized, oh, wow, that maybe my experience was a little either abnormal or that there just are different experiences on this. And so what was interesting about doing that video is I learned so much. I learned so
Mm.
much from doing that video because I did try to consider a lot of different points on that perspective because I first doing the video itself made me reflect on the fact that okay, I guess maybe there are times when I'm not always focused on the visual aspect of reading. And that's definitely not like when I talk about what I love in a book, it's not always what I'm visualizing. More importantly, it's the emotional experience and the themes and those kinds of things. And so I thought about it and I realized, yeah, even though I do visualize what I read and I love that part of reading, it's definitely not required to have a beautiful experience with a book. And so I could totally validate how so many of my friends here on BookTube say they don't visualize what they read, but still have very powerful reading experiences. So I wanted
Yes.
to make sure that that was clear in the video and that there are so many other things to attend to love it to in order to love a book and engage with the story. But then after doing the video and reading the comments, I learned a ton. So one, I learned there is actually a word for it, a fantasia, if I'm saying that correctly, and that's a condition that people have where they really can't picture anything in their minds. Like if they
Okay.
try to visualize, even if you said visualize an apple, imagine an apple, they can't do it. They can't picture anything. Now there's a spectrum. And so there are people who are pretty far on that spectrum and they like to the point, and I have heard this before, but I never put it together with reading. There are
Uh-huh.
people, and this is way more rare, where it's to the point where they wouldn't even recognize their children's faces because they can't keep a
Wow.
visual memory of it. So
Yeah.
you can have a very extreme condition. And I don't think most people have that. I think that's
Yeah.
very, very rare. But I have seen that before in a documentary. I just never put it together with reading. But there are
Okay.
a lot of people who have a very mild form of it. And so they can understand concepts and ideas and themes and engage with story on the emotional elements and the tension that they feel in the story, but they're not necessarily visualizing the elements of the story. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that that was incredibly illuminating for me to learn. Now, my friend Ola, who has the channel Wild Witch, she's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
She pointed me to a video by a booktuber, and many of you probably know about this booktuber, Pen and Pages, who is I guess she's more of an author these days, but
Mm-hmm.
she had a booktube channel or has a booktube channel. It's pretty successful. And she did a video last year, I guess after she tweeted about this condition, having this
Oh,
condition
wow.
herself as an author and a writer, an author and a reader, and people were just going crazy over it. And so she did a wonderful in-depth video, which I will link in a future video when I talk about this again. But she did a wonderful video explaining how she has that condition, not the extreme condition. It is a spectrum, but she
Mhm.
doesn't picture any settings or anything. And she doesn't need any descriptions in books in order to enjoy books, that they kind
Okay.
of go over her head. So she ended up explaining how she engages with story and how she's more of a character-driven reader as a result of that. How she engages more with the emotional experiences of the characters,
Uh-huh.
and how that affects her experience. And it's such a good video. But I pinned a comment in my comment section
Mhm.
by Stacy, and Stacy, while she is not formally diagnosed with this condition or anything, and I don't know, I can't diagnose anybody, she did say that she also does not visualize at all. And it's to the point where people, like when she reads books that are very popular, like Senlin Ascends and The Night Circus, which I know is a book that you love, she said
Yes.
those books for her she will either DNF them or they will be like 1 to 2 star reads for her because
Mhm.
she can't visualize. So for her, unlike the person Pen and Pages who did that video,
Mhm.
Stacy, although she has that condition, she's not a character driven reader at all. She is a plot driven reader. And I've buddy read books with Stacy before, and she's phenomenal at like being able to identify aspects of the plot and what's happening in the plot and plot holes and how things work together. And I've always been so impressed with her insights about that. But that's
Mhm.
how she engages with the story. but she said if she reads description, it doesn't work for her. And so for me, that created a whole lot of compassion in me
Hmm.
for when, because it's easy for us, I think, as readers to fall in love with stories and then get really to kind of have a huge shock or gasp. And it's happened to me before too from my friends. You didn't love this book. How dare you? Or, not necessarily that, not even cruelly intentioned, but it could be like,
Right.
what? You don't like this book? What's wrong? But it made me realize, oh, maybe it's something we should start considering when we think about what we're loving about the book or the experience we're having, because not everybody attends to the same things. And even people who are visual readers, they might not put the same amount of weight or importance on that aspect of storytelling
Very
as other visual
true.
readers. So I just think all these things are I'm learning a lot, basically. I don't know if I've ever learned so much from a video like that, but that's also why I love these book topic videos. They always make me learn so much.
Yeah, absolutely. They do me too. And there's yeah, and everybody's experiences are so different. So it does really engender a lot of compassion, and understanding among different readers to say, I understand that my experience isn't yours, and that's okay. And yeah, absolutely. Uh, Send me the link to that video after the stream, and I'll put it in the show notes here too.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. I
yeah,
will.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Mona Lisa's here. Hi.
Hello.
We've got a lot of comments on that topic, actually. Ercie's,
Yeah.
she's a visual reader, looks like. She can't take interruptions because it ruins the movie. It sounds like that's what your experience was, especially early on, Johanna, was
Mhm.
you get so
Yeah.
wrapped up in it. Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
I don't visualize, but I do need some description for the atmosphere. I
Mhm.
can only visualize if I saw the movie. Yeah, I'm kind of that way, and we'll probably talk about that here in a minute.
Yeah, a lot of people said that because that was something I brought up in the video too, is that whether adaptations either hurt or hinder that, because I imagine that for visual readers, an
Mhm,
adaptation will either complement
mhm.
the vision that they have or that they had with the text. And I'm old enough to have read Harry Potter before it was in theaters, and I remember feeling that way. I felt like when I saw the Harry Potter film, I was so impressed with the way the filmmakers brought to life
Yes.
Hogwarts and the way I imagined it. It felt like
Mhm,
it was exactly how I imagined it, like the way the staircases moved and the
mhm,
talking pictures, those kinds of things. All those
mhm.
details just came to life exactly how I imagined it in my mind. And but for other people, I could see how maybe it clashes with how they visualize things. But I did get a number of people who said either that they aren't great visual readers and that that fan art and movie adaptations greatly help, that they
Oh,
almost
yeah,
rely on it. Hmm.
absolutely. They do help a lot. Hi, Chaz and Joanna. Sorry I'm late. Oh,
Oh,
glad you stopped in,
thank you
Scott.
so
Thank
much,
you.
Scott.
Hey, Jonathan. Welcome. Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, when we're used to reading a certain way, we don't necessarily really know that other people don't experience it the same way. It makes total sense.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that was as much as I'm a little embarrassed that I had some ignorance on this topic, at the same time, I'm really glad I did the video because when I learned, but also I noticed a lot of people said that. There were tons and tons of people either had the comment I would see most frequently is, what? How do people not visualize? Like people were just shocked that there are
Hmm.
people out there who love books and who read and they don't visualize what they're reading. People were shocked by that, or there were just tons of people who said, yeah, I don't visualize. And
Hmm.
I was surprised whenever I heard they thought that whenever people said it's like a movie, they thought it was just like uh, almost like a figure of speech and not not a real thing. So
Hmm.
it's amazing when we realize as we get older and through talking about these things, we realize, oh, we're having different experiences. How
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. Yeah, it is really interesting. Like for me, it's very situational. Like it depends on the book. I I was able to to visualize very vividly with The Starless Sea by Aaron Morgenstern, and also with Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman.
Hmm.
Those are the two main books that I can think of that I was able to visualize with, and A Song of Ice and Fire for the most
Hmm.
part. I was able to visualize well in those books because I read those almost all the books before even starting the show.
Hmm.
But someone said here, yeah, Ursi said with Game of Thrones, it helped her to visualize. And it did help me a lot with that too. After I read the books coming to the show, I was able to better kind of piece things together because I've found that I definitely have a hard time with characters, especially the way they look and things like that, without seeing a
Yes.
visual representation, and also spatially, you know, the like where different rooms are in a house, or where different kingdoms or whatever are in a world, without kind of seeing a map or something like that to help me out with that. It's just those rare books like Ocean and The Starless Sea. I couldn't even totally visualize with The Night Circus,
Hmm.
even though it's one of my favorite books. But I definitely had to get some help from fan art and stuff like that. So it seems it all depends on the book, really, for me.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting you said that about the characters versus the setting as well, because that was another comment that I seem to get quite a bit, was that people had a much easier time visualizing settings versus
mm-hmm,
characters. And somebody actually, an erudite adventure, brought
mm-hmm,
up in the comment section that after rereading The Lord of the Rings, he noticed that Tolkien doesn't really give a lot of detail on character description
he
versus
doesn't.
setting, and that he had a very vivid image in his mind of what Treebeard looked like, and it
Uh-huh.
was different than the film. It kind of clashed a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm also old enough to have read some of the Lord of the Rings before the movie adaptations came out, but yeah, I do think that adaptations, they can play a role for me. They kind of do insert themselves when I read a story, and
Mm-hmm,
I think that's interesting though about the character descriptions, because one, just recognizing that Tolkien didn't even attend to those details as much, and he attends to the details quite a bit when he talks
mm-hmm.
about Middle Earth. And
He
so Middle
does.
Earth is a setting that everyone has such a vivid idea of, and who are visual readers anyway, and especially with the movie, I think. But
Mm-hmm,
also, I also wonder if maybe the reason for that is because a lot of times when authors describe characters, I don't know a lot of authors that put a lot of detail on character descriptions. And when they put any emphasis on character description, usually I feel like it's when the character is first introduced, and
mm-hmm.
then they don't spend a lot of time going back to that. And then, but when you're going along in the story, they're going to be describing the setting continuously because that's what's driving the story. We're constantly changing settings. So to me,
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense that we wouldn't have as clear a vision or an inner vision of what a character looks like than a setting.
Right. Absolutely. Liam says here, like to see a people who visualize their theater of the mind, people in D or D&D. Oh yeah, yeah, that would be interesting.
Oh, wait, so the
Oh
people who visualize the theater in the mind, people in D&D or minis on a grid. Uh,
yeah, I think he's referring to like when you're playing D&D, if it's very much like a movie playing out in your head as you're going along through the campaign. Uh,
yeah,
I have not played D&D a ton, but that's another area where for me it's hard to visualize.
I would think you would have to visualize to play D&D.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I have played D&D before, just a couple of times, and I
Yeah,
don't see how you could do it without the visual, even when you're thinking about where you're going, everything. So I
exactly.
would think that would be really hard to do. I'm sure you could. You could do it
Yeah.
without visualizing, but
And that may be why D&D didn't hasn't always clicked with me, whereas tabletop box games like like Lords of Waterdeep and stuff like that.
Mm.
Since it's so visual, that really helps me.
I
That's
actually prefer those too. Well, I've only
yeah.
played D&D a couple of times, and so I don't know how much of that had to do with the way it was set up and everything. But honestly, so far, I like Gloomhaven or games that are more
Oh
tabletop.
yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't played Gloomhaven yet, but I've wanted to.
Oh, it's my favorite.
I've seen this game
It's
a
so
few
good.
times. Help me visualize characters. Yeah. So many characters. Yeah, that's one thing about A Song of Ice and Fire. There are so many characters. He writes it in such a way that you really get immersed in the characters, but there's so many to keep track of.
Yeah, I had no problem with it though. That was the thing that shocked me, is he kept introducing characters and I'd never confused a single one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Different visual of a character than what they saw in the movie. Actress playing Hermione. What? So,
Interesting. Okay.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I see. I didn't know that. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that happens
That
all
is
the time
super
though.
interesting.
I, yeah.
Well, continue.
Jeremy. Yes, we did. We said D&D. I don't know. I still need to keep trying with D&D. I could see it eventually becoming something that'll click with me.
I do too. Yeah, I need to as well.
Mm, yeah.
Give me 1 second
No
here.
worries.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so yeah, theater of the mind versus using battle maps and miniatures. Yeah, yeah, that visuals are always more helpful for me.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah. Secret Adversary is really, really good, and the two main characters in that are a lot of fun. But again, yeah, they're hard to visualize facial feature wise and things. I
Mm.
think facial features are probably one of the harder ones for a lot of people to visualize.
I talked
Yeah,
about
like
that
last
in the
one's
video, and
Gloomhaven.
yeah, I talked about that kind of in the video I did because I guess I may be more. I'm going to suspect that I might be a little more visual than some people because,
Mhm.
like I said, when I read The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear, by the time I got to the end of The Wise Man's Fear, I had a dream I met Gavoth, and I could
Wow.
see him in vivid detail, and he talked to me, and he was so vivid. And I also have very vivid dreams too. I'm very much a visual kinesthetic learner.
Uh-huh.
So even in my dreams, I could feel things and I see things so in so much detail and color and everything.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So it seems like to me there's a spectrum. There's a spectrum of how much people can visualize versus can't, and even any point on the spectrum, there's a lot of variation. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, and I do wonder if for some people, maybe not everyone, but I do. It's hard to know because I feel like there's just a lot to learn about this subject. But I'm
Right.
going to wonder if it's also something for some people where you can actually develop that skill, where you can actually develop the skill of visualizing more.
Probably so. Yeah. I would imagine it is. I'm sure something like that can be learned.
Hmm.
Name of the Wind international covers have great Kavoth art. They do. Yeah, and with all the great character art that's out there too, I think that helps. For me, it
I
definitely
hadn't seen
helped
any.
that.
I hadn't seen any visual. I hadn't seen any character art when I
Oh
had that
wow.
dream of both.
Oh, wow, that's
It was
amazing.
before I really got into BookTube or anything, so
Hmm.
it was weird.
Yeah, that
It was
is.
very weird.
Yeah, it definitely helps. At least for me, like it helped that Geralt, for instance, was already a huge pop culture icon with the Witcher video games and everything. So I already kind of had that visual image of him before I started reading the books. But yeah, yeah, and then some books are like I can get a total that like I mentioned, the Starless Sea was just so immersive, and I'm really excited because I ordered a special illustrated edition of the Night Circus that's coming out in November. So that will definitely help.
Yeah.
and there's some really beautiful artwork.
Have you ever read the book The Never-Ending Story?
I have not read the book. I watched the movie who knows how many times as a kid, and yeah, it's one of my favorite movies, but I have not read the book. I've
Oh, you should
wanted to.
definitely read the book. I could see you loving the book.
Oh, I can
I think it's a
imagine.
CHAS book. I think it's a CHAS
Mhm.
book, and I read it in high school. I reread it as an adult a few years ago, still loved it. But the thing about the book is it is interesting because the main character is described differently in the book
Uh-huh.
than he is in the movie. Otherwise, and there are some different complexities, I think, to his relationship with his father that are brought out more in the book than in the movie. But the
Mhm.
movie ends halfway through the book. The movie is a brilliant adaptation. I think it's an excellent adaptation. However, you're going to be blown away by how good the book is. I think you'll love it.
Yeah. Yeah. One
Yeah.
second here.
The Name of the Wind, international covers. Yeah, I need to check those out. I don't see faces at all, even hair color. I forget.
Oh, yeah, I saw that comment as well. Yeah. Yeah, I
Hello,
forget his
Michael.
Hey,
My
welcome,
favorite
welcome.
sci-fi channel.
Yeah, he's got some great content.
Oh, he's amazing. He's
Okay,
got the
Never
most
Ending
beautiful
Story,
stuff.
I'm guessing, is going on Chadia's TBR. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I haven't read a lot of books that children's movies were based on.
You would love that one though.
Yeah, I've
I
read a
have.
few, but
I've read a few actually. I've
yeah,
read The Princess Bride and The Last Unicorn and that one.
yeah.
But I really think you would love The Never-Ending Story. I think that's probably my favorite of all of them too.
Oh, that's excellent to hear.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely check it out. I haven't read the Last Unicorn either, and what was the other one you mentioned?
Good. The Princess Bride.
Princess Bride. Yeah, I mean the movie is one of my absolute favorites
Yeah,
of all
yeah.
time.
I
Uh,
I don't feel like so that what I say is I did love The Princess Bride, the book, and
uh-huh.
I do want to reread that someday.
Yeah.
And I love the movie, and the Princess Bride movie is absolutely a classic. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And while I did enjoy the book and thought, uh, it was good, I don't feel like I'd ever really want to reread the book, but I would rewatch the movie in a second. So,
Oh yeah. I've heard that from other people actually too. Yeah, I've heard that the book is good, but the movie's such a good adaptation that it almost overshadows the book in a lot of ways. So,
mhm,
yep. No,
yeah,
no, he's only mostly dead.
yeah,
Yeah, such a classic
love
movie.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you watched many adaptations of
No,
books?
no, I mean, I watched those ones because I grew up with them, but
Hmm.
I'm the worst when it comes to watching adaptations, like the worst. I don't know why. There are so many books that I have not seen the adaptation to. At one point, I had a huge list,
Hmm.
and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I could almost do a video on how many adaptations I've read the book of, but I haven't actually seen the movie of. And I don't know
Okay.
why. It's funny because a lot of people, it's kind of the opposite. They see the adaptation and they don't feel motivated to read the book. But for me, it's the other way around. It's like I'll
Mhm.
read the book and I don't feel motivated to see the adaptation.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if it's kind of a motivation thing as well for you, 'cause, are you almost kind of worried in a way that it will ruin your experience of the book, or
Not necessarily. Like the one that's coming to mind, I guess because Fit to Be Read is on here, is Ready Player One. I really enjoyed the book,
Mhm.
and for whatever reason, I just didn't feel motivated to see the movie, even though the movie looked like it would be cool. And I don't know
Yeah.
why. I did for a little while, and then it went away. But I think I'm just like that in general when it comes to watching anything. I don't watch a lot of movies in general, and
Mhm.
that's been the case for me forever. Like since I was probably a late teen. I just completely, I don't know what it was. I suddenly lost my interest in watching most movies. And it's something that's kind of funny because my family is the opposite. My mother and brother, they will go to the movie just to be in the movie theater, experience the theater, experience the popcorn. I don't like popcorn. I don't really like sitting for 2 hours. I'd rather go watch live music. So yeah, it's weird. I'm just not into movies that much or TV shows that much.
Yeah.
But I do, but the ones I love, I end up loving. It just takes some motivation for me to get out there and see it.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, there's so many adaptations out there now too. It's easy to fall behind. Um, I really loved the Ready Player One book. I did see the movie a couple years after I'd read the book, and it was okay. It was a fun movie, but I wouldn't say that it's a must see. I don't think you're missing a whole lot, Joanna.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And yeah, Ursi's a fan of Ready Player One as well. Yeah, it was different from the book.
yeah.
Just go ahead and watch the TV shows. Yeah, sometimes that's actually what I ended up doing with Wheel of Time. I had read the first couple of books and I wanted to continue, but I just decided, you know what, I'm not really feeling it. I'm just gonna watch the show, see where it goes, and maybe someday down the road I'll read Wheel of Time. But
Yeah.
Theo,
The other challenge I have with adaptations is that they always end up kind of blurting out my memory of the books. Almost
mm,
always. I think I probably mentioned this before, but it's happened to me. Like, for example, I recently read The Lord of the Rings all the way through.
uh-huh,
And then started watching the adaptations. And while I'm watching the adaptation, I can note, okay, this is different, this is different, this is different. And it's very, very clear to me as I'm watching all
yes,
the differences, all the things they left out, all the things they changed. But then a week or two later, it's all blurred and I
mm-hmm.
can't remember. And I almost have to reread the book after I see the adaptation to make sure I have my memory clear.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. I find that that happens with me too, Joanna. So you're not alone.
But I do love those. I love The Lord of the Rings. Jimmy!
Jimmy's here. Way.
But I do love The Lord of the Rings, and I do love, honestly, the Harry Potter movies. I
Oh, I
rewatched
love
those
those
with my
too.
yeah, they're just so cozy. So I
And
rewatched all of those with my husband last winter, and it was just the coziest experience to rewatch those movies when it was colder.
absolutely. And I like the Fantastic Beasts movies too. I think they're actually quite good. They don't get a lot of love, but I think they're quite good. I haven't seen the new movie that just came out, but
Seen any of them.
yeah, the first one I thought was especially good, and the second was good too. And I'm a huge fan of Mads Mikkelsen, so I'll be watching the third one.
Okay.
But yeah, lots of love for Ready Player One here. Okay, yeah, yep. She hasn't quite finished it. Just went ahead and started watching The
Oh,
Witch. Oh yeah, The Witcher's really good.
yeah,
That's a very it's not like a 100% accurate adaptation, but it's very close.
yeah.
They did a good job with that one.
I did watch the first season, and I thought they did a pretty good job. There were some things that I didn't care for as much, but as I did
Mhm.
even with the books, though, my attention, I did read the entire Witcher series, every single Witcher book published, and my
Yeah.
enjoyment in that series was up and down the entire time.
It
And
definitely has its hills and
it
valleys.
does, it does. It has some fantastic characters,
Oh yeah.
but unfortunately for me, plot wise, it just I don't know, it just seemed to meander a bit.
Yeah.
Or not, it did, my attention did wane with that, or my engagement waned. But yeah, I did really love what they did with that first season. And I started the second season, and I do need to finish it at some point. But I only watched the first episode, which they did adapt. That was actually one of my favorite stories that they adapted in that first episode of season two. So that was cool.
It's one of mine too. Yeah, and I thought season two was almost better than season one.
Oh,
I
I probably should
really
keep
enjoyed it.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also the necessary changes that need to be made for the various adaptations. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very true. It's interesting. I'm following very closely the adaptation of The Sandman by Neil Gaiman,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks like they're making it a very close adaptation with a few changes. I think in the show, Dream is going to be in prison for 100 years, whereas in the comics he was in prison for 80 years, or so, because they're trying to bring it up to date, like with cell phones and things like that. So, but other than that, it looks like it's going to be really good. Good Omens was excellent. I mean, it
I
was
never
just,
saw that. And I read
oh,
the book twice, and I have
oh, it's
I don't know.
so good. I mean, they did a marvelous job of adapting it. Oh my goodness. We
11/22/63,
I
another
watched it
adaptation I
twice.
haven't
My kids
seen.
have watched it 3 times. It's just amazing. So,
Yeah, so many, like I said, I've read so many books that have
mhm.
adaptations I still haven't seen. I'm the worst. I need to write a huge list because there are so many.
There
Um,
are so many, and of course I started watching The Expanse before I read the first book, and that helped with reading the book as well. But I'll tell you what, I was really impressed because season 1 is, with a few exceptions, is almost beat for beat exactly from book 1.
yeah, I saw the first
Yeah.
couple of episodes of The Expanse, as I mentioned that video a few years before reading Leviathan Wakes, and
Mhm.
I don't know how much that influenced me, but I really enjoyed Leviathan Wakes.
Mhm.
And I think it did help to kind of see the a couple of those episodes first. Now I'll be honest, I didn't really care for the show after about 2 or 3 episodes. I was like, "Eh, I'm done." And then later on, it actually surprised me when I picked up Leviathan Weeks because I remembered thinking, I didn't even really care about the show, even though it's super popular.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed Leviathan Wakes. I really loved that book. I still think about it. I still
Mhm.
I
Same
like
here.
I talked to you about that. I'm like, were you a Miller or Holden? Because I just love the whole philosophical question behind that book of
Oh, I
how do
do
you
too.
disseminate important information? Because that happens sometimes. That happened in our real world a few years ago. You
Mhm.
know something that is very consequential to everybody that is going to impact everybody's life. How do you let them know about it?
Mhm.
How do you keep it quiet? Do you tell them all at once? What is your responsibility in that, and how do you work with that? And I feel like that book addressed that question, and it was
Mhm.
amazing because, of course, it was published before, the pandemic and all that. But
Mhm. It was.
but it was just amazing to me how I don't know. It really made me think about that question.
It did me too, yeah, and you're right. It was very well done, very well executed. To put it into a story format like that and ask those questions, because of course Holden is very much the idealist, and he's the uh, all information should be public and everything like that, and Miller's very much the you're on a need to know basis, and
Like, you want to have toilet paper tomorrow, right?
right, right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah,
Sorry, I had to go there. But
I
yeah,
I I like that. That was good.
but
Yeah.
and also I did think that the space opera elements were incredible. Like the way
Mhm.
that they talked about accelerating through space. And I honestly felt so immersed in space when I read that book that
Mhm.
when I put down the book, I picked up the next book I picked up after reading Leviathan Weeks was the Republic, the R.F. Kuang, the second book in the Poppy War.
Oh, yes,
Can't
The
think of the name.
Dragon Republic.
Dragon Republic, thank you.
Yeah,
I
I
picked
haven't
up
read it
that
yet.
book, which is more boots on the ground, and I felt like kind of disoriented. It was an adjustment to go from space opera to, oh, I'm on Earth again. Like
Oh,
that's how
right.
immersed in space I felt with Leviathan Wake. So I actually thought, for me, it was very immersive. I thought that they did a good job.
They did. Yeah, they did really do a good job, and if that's any indication for me of Daniel Abraham's writing, then I definitely want to pick up more of his books, because and I don't know how much Ty Franck did with the writing, but from what I heard, Daniel Abraham did most of the writing,
I don't know.
and then Ty Franck was more of the idea guy, but I don't know for sure. So,
Yeah, yeah, I don't know.
but yeah, yeah, Toddy was the same about the show. Okay,
Cool.
cool. Did better than the books. It did. Yeah. I heard a lot of people say that in the book, Holden felt more wooden and kind of one-dimensional, and I can see that in some respects. And I think that's
Huh.
another thing that the show helped me with, to see the nuance in his character.
Yeah,
So,
I felt like with Holden, I got more of an idea of his character, less from his dialogue and um, I guess from the nuances described in his character, as much as I did from how others around him responded to him. That
mhm,
was sort of how I was able to kind of put together, okay, this is a guy who's built a lot of trust
mhm.
in his comrades over the years. He has some experience, but actually, I really liked that about the. It's funny because I have so many positive things to say about Leviathan Wakes. I actually thought both Miller and Holden felt to me like guys I would see at the gas station and wouldn't think twice
Yes.
about. They felt like realistic people. But at the same time, I don't know why I just didn't feel. I didn't feel compelled to continue The Expanse for some reason. I mean, that series. But I did.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that book, and I do want to read more space operas. I think. I think the problem is there are so much good sci-fi out right now that I
There
want to read.
is, yeah, sci-fi is really making a resurgence in terms of not only popularity, but quality of content too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, One thing I wanted to mention here, I don't know if you remember Avasarala from the show.
I
Apparently, she
never.
doesn't show up until a few books into the series, but she was amazing in the show, so I'm so excited to see her character in the books.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't remember the name. If
that
I
was
saw her,
one
I might.
change. Apparently, they added her early in the show as opposed to where she was in the books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I've heard To Sleep is a really good book. I've not read it yet, but apparently Percy said it's really immersive, so that's
Hmm,
cool.
yeah. Um,
Uh, yeah, did you read the book or do the audio for The Expanse?
I read it. I read
Mhm.
it. Yeah, and I
Same here.
actually read it. I'm a very slow reader, but I read that one within a week, which was pretty amazing for me, pacing for me. So
Oh, yeah. I
yeah,
read it very quickly
yeah,
too.
it does read
Mhm.
pretty quickly. So speaking
Yeah.
of books, have
Mhm.
you oh yeah, did you listen to the audiobook or
I didn't. I did it with
you did
I did the ebook.
the
Yeah,
ebook?
so,
Yeah.
mhm.
I did too. I used the ebook as well.
Hey, how you
Yeah.
doing, Ariel? Good to see you. Sorry, you were gonna ask a question?
Assassin's Apprentice. Did you finish it?
Yes, I
Oh, what
loved
did
it.
you think?
I loved it, absolutely.
Yay! Oh, I'm so
I
excited.
mean, it was a slow burn, but it was a good slow burn, and I was chatting back and forth with Derry a little bit in Discord, and she was just over the top excited when she heard how much I loved it, and and I knew I was going to get that reaction from her. She's such a sweetheart.
Oh, it's
Um,
so funny because I didn't tell anybody when I picked up Assassin's Apprentice. I told 3 people. I told my friend Ola from Wild Witch because I just talk with her quite frequently, just
mhm.
informally. I told Ben from Overly Average Ben because it made me put off Red Country, which was our buddy read last month.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we did read it, but I put it off to read Assassin's Apprentice, and he forgave me for that. And
Mhm.
I told Derry, and that was it. I didn't tell anybody else. I didn't put it on a TBR because I just wanted it to be. It just felt like something you want to keep sacred in a way.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, that
yeah,
makes perfect sense.
yeah,
Yeah, I did put it on my TBR, but um so I did plan to read it, or I put it into an elective slot because I had some elective slots for this month, and so I put it into one of those slots, and it was uh just perfect for me. I don't know if you've read Shadow and Claw by Gene Wolfe, but
not yet, but I'm going to at some point.
it's very similar first person writing style, but I'll tell you what, I didn't I was very sorry that I finished Shadow and Claw, but I had the complete opposite experience with Assassin's Apprentice. Uh, it was just I can't get enough of Fitz. I really can't. So
Nobody does first person narration better than Hobb. I've
yeah.
never ever read first person narration better than Hobb. Now it has been a long while now since I read The Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear, and I think that Rothfuss did an incredible job with those books. But the
Mhm.
way that Hobb builds incredibly rich secondary and even tertiary characters in the world through Fitz's perspective, I've just never seen anything like it. And the way she plays, even with our perspective as readers,
Hmm.
is just some of the most phenomenal character work I've ever read.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed Fitz, his dynamic with the Fool.
Mm,
And I know they become kind of very much a dynamic duo down the road. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, I'm definitely going to keep reading. At the very least, the Farseer trilogy. I'm going to finish that one. I do want to eventually read the other books as well. I just don't know how quickly I'll get to them, but I definitely want to finish Farseer. Um, you know, I've got so many series I'm working on right now, so it's hard to find the time, right, to get
yeah.
to everything.
If you haven't yet, I have to recommend because I don't know, I just can't shout it out enough. And I did mention it. I put it in my show in my description of my review. But watch. Have you seen Jimmy's video on the scene you might have missed in Assassin's Apprentice? Jimmy from the Fantasy Network.
Oh, I saw it. It popped up in my feed, and for whatever reason, I put it into my memory for later, which that memory doesn't work very well, and I forgot about it because at the time I didn't want
You
spoilers for
have
the
to
book.
watch
I
it.
was,
You
yeah,
have to watch that video. Now that you
okay,
finished
I
Assassin's
will.
Apprentice, you have to watch that video. And then you need to tell me your reaction once you do.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I will definitely watch that. So Jimmy, if you're watching, I'm coming for that video, man.
Yes,
uh that's interesting. So Shura Agadashlu played Avasarala in the show, but he says he pictured her as Avasarala when he first read the book. That's pretty cool.
that is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a great actor. Slow
Yeah.
Burn Tension makes me happy. Yes,
Yeah, I
indeed.
was talking about this last night, how
Yeah.
I am the worst. I'm the most unreliable, I think, when it comes to pacing, because
Hmm.
I'll read books and think, oh, that was amazing. That was so fast paced. And everybody else will say, that was really slow. So I'm
Yeah.
the worst. I always think things are fast and everybody thinks they're slow. But with Robin Hobb's writing, I will admit that even I can recognize it's a slow burn. Now, that doesn't mean
Mm.
I'm ever unengaged with the story or bored ever. But I can recognize it does take its time. And so I can see how that's not going to appeal to all readers, but
Mm.
for me, it works fine.
Yeah, that's great. I really enjoyed my experience with it, and I'm looking. I mean, and I loved other characters too. I loved Shade. I
Mm.
loved Uruk. I mean, I was just um, I loved to hate
Regal?
Gavlin or not
Oh,
Gavlin.
yes.
Uh,
Galen.
okay, yeah.
That's
I
what I
love
call it.
to hate him.
Yeah.
Just yeah, it was really cool, and the very subtle magic system I thought was uh, almost not even a magic; it's more of an ability, really. And but it's just really cool and excellently done. So I'm having a blast reading it so far.
Oh, wait till you get to Royal
How's it
Assassin
going, Baron? Good to see you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the slow moments with it.
And
Yeah,
Royal
good, Galen.
Assassin,
Thank
it
you.
does not do anything of what you expect it to do. It's so incredible. And even
Yeah.
with Assassin's Quest, I'm like, what? I gasped and have like gasped out loud so many times.
Yeah. Um, what do you think has been your most memorable reading experience since you joined BookTube?
It's got to be Malazan Book of the Fallen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, all those books that because I did start the series before I started a channel, which I
Yeah.
think was good. I'm so glad I did in a way. In a way, it's unfortunate because I don't have videos on the first three books,
Hmm.
but it was the most incredible epic ride of my life. Yeah.
Wow. That's great to hear. I because I've honestly really struggled with Malazan. Um, I loved Gardens of the Moon. That one was a reread for me. I read it many years before and it didn't click with me, but then it did this time around.
Hmm.
But then Dead House Gates really didn't click with me too well, and I'm still struggling with Memories of Ice, even though it's better than Dead House Gates for me. So
Yeah, they're tricky reads in some ways. I think what helped me, there's a video I would recommend watching that I can send you too by Andy Smith. And it's basically explaining Malazan as I think he calls it a deconstructivist approach to fantasy.
I
But the
can see
way, yeah, and the way he basically explains that is how Erickson is kind of subverting tropes in fantasy, and it's different than the way like Abercrombie subverts tropes, because
that.
Abercrombie kind of almost darkens and twists tropes
He
left and right
does.
in a humorous way and in a very obvious way. But what
Yeah.
Erickson's doing is he's kind of turning the whole approach to fantasy on its head with what he's
Hmm.
doing. And so in fantasy, we're used to orienting ourselves through a story through one or a small group of characters
Hmm.
and about a sort of story arc going a very specific way. And he transforms all of that where you're not following one specific hero of the story and you're following so when I understood that, and when I understood it wasn't really, even though there are incredible characters in that series, and I think the characters, honestly, for me, this is going to sound kind of weird to say because I think the character work is incredible from book one on. I mean, there are incredibly vivid, detailed, rich characters in Gardens of the Moon, Dead House Gates, Memories of Ice. However, I don't think I really fell in love with the characters, with maybe one or two exceptions to this. I don't think I really felt invested and in love with the characters until book four, and more so from book five on.
Yeah.
Then some of my favorite characters of all time took over for me in that series. But that said, it's not a character driven series, not in that traditional sense, even though the character work is phenomenal, in my opinion. And it's not really a plot driven story, even though there is a plot. There's a lot of plot. And a
Hmm.
lot of the plot honestly still goes over my head. And I had to have Phillips help with that a lot.
Yeah.
But when I was told, well, the key thing for me was when I was told this is a theme driven series,
Hmm.
then it clicked.
Hmm.
Then you're not necessarily looking for storylines to make sense and tie together in a neat bow, or to have one character tell a story, or to be about this character's journey, even though there are those things. It's not that there aren't those things, but
Hmm.
it's more about what is the theme that Erickson is trying to tell you with what's happening on the page now. And sort of that was when suddenly magic came off the page. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't struggle at times, though, because I do remember Memories of Ice. Now, that book for me was a very powerful one. I was talking about this last night on Steve Talks Books channel. I read
Hmm.
that book when I was going through a very hard time in my life. I had an injury. I was in a ton of pain all the time. And for some reason, that book hit me, it just hit the right notes for me. It was very cathartic for me, especially some of the emotional things that happen at the end of the book. It worked for me in a way that most other books didn't at that time. So it could have been a timing thing for me. But I do remember that there is a lot of history and lore that's introduced in Memories of Ice that did make me note take like crazy, which probably wasn't necessary at all, but I did. And so I did feel kind of like I did feel a little bit bogged down when I was reading it, trying to keep track of things. And it'd been a long time since I'd read the first two books. But then the end, it really hit home. It hit me in a way that I very few books ever have. And
Hmm.
same thing with the fourth book. Even I will defend that fourth book forever. I know a lot of people aren't as big a fan of that fourth book. I think it's a masterpiece personally. But I think what Erickson does is he really takes a departure from the typical fantasy structures too. And I love that. I appreciate that so much.
Hmm.
And it's a risk. He takes a risk
It
with it.
is.
But for
Yeah.
me, there's a payoff. And for me, The Crippled God, the last book, even though it's not like I said, it's not like everything ties up in a perfect bow.
Hmm.
But for me, I was so satisfied with how it ended. I was so satisfied, and I'm still riding an emotional wave over that series. It got me to tear up so many times. So, and it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's so well loved, and I do like risky fantasy. I like it when authors take risks, and I'm probably going to take a break from it after I finish Memories of Ice because I've got a few other books that are really high priority for me. But I will probably eventually finish it. I don't plan to DNF the series yet,
Mm-hmm.
but it's been a real struggle for me.
I
Yeah.
think it's okay if you do DNF the series. I
Mhm.
know Baron there at Your Brain on Books says that Malazan is definitely not for everyone.
Yes.
100% agree.
Yeah.
1000% agree. It is
Yeah.
not for everyone. And that's
It's
kind of a
not.
challenging thing because I think most people on BookTube, they're like, if it's your favorite book or favorite series of all time, then you're going
Mhm.
to say, everybody needs to read this. And usually I'm that type of person. Usually, if I have an experience with something that I'm happy or excited about, I've always been the type of person that wants to shout to the moon and back that I want everyone to experience what I experienced. But I know how personal Moasin was for me. And I know it's just not going to be for everyone. And that's okay. And even Erickson is okay with that, as far as I can
Yeah,
tell, too.
absolutely. Yeah,
So,
he realizes that his books aren't going to be for everyone. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
they're not.
We've got a potato discussion
Oh,
in
I
the
don't
chat
even know.
here.
I probably don't say, I know somebody shouted at me in my comments one time that I say it wrong. So
Yeah, I think I know Erickson says Malazan. I've always said Malazan. I think it's one of those. It's kind of
Malazan.
like I don't know if you've ever read.
I think it is Malazan. I think that's probably how you say it.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever read Terry Brooks, but for all these years I've always said Shannara, but he pronounces it Shanra, but then all of his fans say Shannara as well. So it's kind of like I think it in some ways it's up for debate
Hmm.
as yeah, Malazan.
Malazan.
Yeah, yeah.
I have no idea. I know I'm probably saying it wrong, but I know Erickson doesn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It is a
Cruppet.
That's a
Cruppet.
good way to put it. I know the EP kind of in from a Critical Dragon. He's I'm always shouting him out. Like every time I talk about the series, I'm like, go watch his videos because his videos are so good. But he
Yeah.
talked one time about how there's so many videos I feel like I watched that really changed the way I look at books and narrative in general. And a lot of times he had a really good video where people say that like the idea, and I used to say this, that if it doesn't serve the narrative, then that part should be cut out of the book. And he
Mm.
said that's probably good advice if you know what narrative is.
Hmm.
But a lot of times we don't really know what narrative is. Usually, so like in the and I might even be inaccurate saying this. So I'm sorry if I am, but perhaps Malazan is a narrative about a world. I mean, there's more than that. There are themes, obviously,
Hmm.
but it's sort of like building upon themes about a world. So what if it's not about so much a plot or character? It is those things, but when your story is focused on a world, then it has a different kind of focus. There's a different way of telling that story.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I'm really I like I said, I can understand. I do not fault anybody for DNFing the series. And actually, I think the first three books, that's a pretty good taste test. If you get through the first three books and you think, that's probably not for me. Yeah, you've had a really strong taste of Malazan, how are you saying it?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that's what I've heard a lot of people say. If you make it through book 3 and you're just not clicking with it, that's a good place to stop because you've gotten enough on the world that you can make a sound judgment on that.
yeah.
So yeah, especially with book 2 taking such a divergence from the setting, with a completely new setting and mostly new characters with the exception of a few. It's good to get into book 3 because you go back to the like Anamanda Rake and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
you're
but see, that's the
going
thing.
back all.
That's exactly how it's different because a lot of times in fantasy, you want to stay, you want something to ground you. You want
Hmm.
the characters to ground you, the familiar setting to ground you.
Hmm.
Erickson's not going to give you that comfort.
Yeah.
Keep
And that's
expanding.
good.
You go all the way into book 10 and you're still introduced to new characters.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
still introduced to new characters. That expansive character cast list doesn't stop. The
Yeah.
world doesn't
And
stop. It just
and
keeps going.
and that I don't mind. I love that about A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Because you ended up getting introduced to a lot of new characters later on down the road, and so yeah. But yeah, book 3 is a good. Yeah, Baron did the 3-book test.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
You
know
mentioned.
that,
Oh,
sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna. I was gonna rotate to a different series real quick. But did you have another thought there on Malazan?
Oh, no, no, no. I was just going to say, yeah, I know that the Baron is, I've kind of gotten the impression, Baron, and you let me know if I'm wrong, that maybe uh, that series hasn't quite resonated for you as much. And maybe I know the R. Scott Baker one has really resonated with you so far in book 1. So, I mean, there's so many other series. So
Mhm.
it's completely fine
Yeah, R.
to,
Scott Baker is another one that I really want to get to.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel bad because I can keep going like why I love Molasses Book of the Fawn, but no matter how much I can talk about how much I love it and why I love it, and I'm happy to do so, I just
Mhm.
know it's not going to be for everyone. So,
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Abercrombie earlier,
yes.
and I'm gonna put these chats are spoilers, so we don't shy away too much from spoilers on here. So, if you have not read the First Law trilogy, or maybe you're partway through it, you might want to plug your ears for a minute. But I was curious what you thought about the twist at the end, Johanna. You've read the first trilogy, right?
Yeah. I think we
Yeah.
can stay spoiler free.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, let's keep it spoiler free because I'd hate for
Oh,
people to leave
okay.
the chat,
Okay. Yeah. Because what I was going to ask you about was really spoilerish. So
Mm.
I got to figure out if I can do it. I'll try and keep it high level here. The twist at the end with
I know what
the
you're talking about. I know
yeah,
what twist you're talking about.
yeah, with the characters subverting like everything behind the scenes.
There's
And
no way I don't know what you're talking about, Chad.
yeah, yeah. So I'm curious what you thought about that, because he's a very divisive character. He's actually my favorite character in those books.
Hmm.
But
Interesting.
yeah, he's very divisive, though. A lot of fans don't like him, or he's a least favorite character. So I'm
Well, I don't feel like you read Abercrombie for likable characters
right,
in the
right, of
sense that
course,
they're
yeah.
good people.
Yeah,
They're all flawed. They're all deeply flawed.
yes,
And
they
I
are.
personally, without giving away spoilers, I loved the subversions that Abercrombie did in that series. I think that one thing that's really amazing about that series is I think it can appeal to people if you haven't read much fantasy, but I would really recommend it more for people who have read a lot of fantasy,
Yes.
especially classic fantasy. And you're either going to love it or hate it because of that, because it goes against every single thing that people love about fantasy. And what I've said about Abercrombie is that Abercrombie is such an amazing author because I love his prose. I love his writing style. I love his humor. I love
Mhm,
his character work. I love his use of simile. I don't think anybody throws a simile down better than Abercrombie. I
mhm,
love everything that he does. His character work is phenomenal. At the
mhm,
same time, he never, he doesn't, what he does is brilliant and makes me laugh and makes me have a good time. It
mhm,
entertains me. At the same time, I don't read Abercrombie for a sense of wonder
mhm,
and sublime feeling, or, you know what I mean? Those things that we look for in fantasy.
mhm,
Usually we read fantasy because we want to just have this sort of heroic, glorifying, sublime, cathartic, uh, new dimensional feeling. You don't get
mhm.
that in Abercrombie. And that's not
No,
why
you
you read
definitely
Abercrombie,
don't. Yeah,
but it's brilliant. He succeeds brilliantly at what he does. And I
it
loved that subversion. Yeah. I didn't
yeah,
see it coming and it blew
I
my
didn't
mind.
either. I
Um,
didn't either, and that's part of why it was so brilliantly done, is because you don't see it come. There was one thing that happened in book 3 that I could see where it was leading, and I wasn't surprised when it happened. But the very end, with the the puppet master, I'll call him, uh, I did not see that coming, but it was brilliantly executed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're right, that first law has a very classic fantasy feel in a modern sort of way.
I think he intentionally was subverting tropes from The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, may have been, yeah.
No, I think I've heard
Probably.
that he was intentionally subverting tropes from The Lord of the Rings.
Joe is probably the second best dialogue writer. Oh yeah, yeah,
Who's the first best? I want to know
yeah.
who the first best
Oh
is.
yeah, tell us who's the first best.
Maybe Martin?
Who's your favorite dialogue writer?
I would say Abercrombie probably,
Mhm.
maybe. But I also love Martin, and I haven't read The Song of Ice and Fire. It's been 10 years or more than 10 years. But Yolene from Yolene Reads and I are planning on rereading A Song of Ice and Fire starting in January. Oh yes,
Mother
of
Hob.
course. Yes.
I
Yes.
like that he calls her Mother Hob. That's great. That's
Yeah. No,
perfect.
Robin Hobb is
She,
phenomenal.
she
Yeah.
is really great at dialogue. Um, I think my favorite dialogue writer would have to be Martin. Yeah, A Song of Ice and Fire. The dialogue in that series is just uh, second to none. It really is so good. But I do like Robin Hobb as well.
Yeah.
I've heard Ken Liu is
Oh,
really
I know. I feel like I just watched RJ's video earlier. I'm just missing out so much on
yeah.
so many good fantasy books lately.
You know, I said that character was my favorite in the first Law trilogy, but that's actually not true. It was my he was my favorite resolution, I think, but my favorite character overall is Glokta. I can't not say Glokta
Hmm.
is my favorite character, but as far as the overall uh, character plot, I liked that other one the best.
Hmm.
So yeah, and that's my best attempt at keeping it high level for everybody. Which means you have to read the series. Read the
Yeah,
first Law, please.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Martin is fantastic, and I have not read any other books by George R. R. Martin that are outside of Westeros.
No, I
I feel
haven't yet either. I know Jake Bookish Drummer. That George R. R. Martin is his favorite author of all time. So he's
mm,
read everything. He's read all of the obscure books, and apparently he has a really good vampire book that he compares to. If you like Salem's Lot, then you would really love George R. R. Martin's vampire book. I can't remember
okay.
what it's called,
Oh,
but
that's good to know because Salem's Lot is my favorite King book so far that I've read.
it's not my favorite. But I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and I do love the Dark Tower. That's not to say I didn't like the Dark Tower, but I was just blown away by Salem's Lot. That
Hmm.
was fantastic for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Nikki's here. Hi,
Hey,
Nikki.
Nikki. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite, but I love what he did with it, and I thought it was interesting to me because the way I look at Salem's Lot, I feel like he sort of, I mean, it was creepy and it was atmospheric, and it felt as though he made the town a character in itself. So to me, it felt almost like the characters were sort of building the town character. It was almost like world building for the town, if that makes sense.
RJ
Oh, thank
thinks it's so
you.
fevered. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And I've heard of that one. I think did I hear that they're making an adaptation of that one too, possibly?
I know they're making an adaptation, I think, of Salem's Lot, a second
A
adaptation.
new one. Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see what they do with it now that I've actually read the book.
yeah.
Chadi is reading The Golden Fool right
Ah,
now. Yeah.
Robin amazing. Her
Yeah,
writing is
I'm
just somebody was saying, I think it might have been Brandy, Steve's wife, I'm not sure. Somebody was saying that Robin Hobb, her writing feels almost cozy, like a campfire, like you're
uh-huh.
reading by a campfire. There's something
Yeah.
about it that just feels so good to read Hobb.
Absolutely. It really does. I got that from just the one book.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I'm so excited. Yes, that Baron put Yes, 11/22/63. That is one of my favorite books. I love 11/22/63, but I'm also a huge fan of time travel, and I love kind of um, those eras that are explored in 11/22/63, the 50s and early 60s. Yeah, it's such a fantastic book.
So I have kind of an unpopular opinion now. I have not read 11/22/63 yet.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
Okay.
and I've heard that I would like it for the time travel aspects, but I I I appreciate American history, but I despise watching or reading anything about American history. It bores me to death, but I appreciate its impact, but I am completely bored by American history. I really am.
Hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you anything about most presidents. I'm just,
But what if it's historical fiction, so it's more like slice of life in those eras.
yeah,
Oh,
I don't really,
oh.
I don't even care for that stuff. It's just, I know what happened to JFK. I appreciate how foundational it was and how impactful it was for our country's history. I just don't care to read about it. I'm just not historical fiction in general is very iffy for me.
Okay.
But more so American history than I love ancient world history and like other cultural histories like Egyptian mythology and that type of history, but American history just doesn't do it for me.
I
It's
see.
not my thing.
Yeah.
But I've heard that I've been told I should try 11/22/63 anyway, just to see. Um,
I would give it a shot.
yeah,
Boy's Life, yes. Okay, I'm the worst parent. I know, I'm so sorry. I have not finished Boy's Life yet.
yeah.
I started
Well,
the audiobook like weeks ago, and I just honestly, audiobooks for me are very much a mood reading thing. By the way, Boy's Life, have you heard of that? It's
I have. In
yeah.
fact, I think he's talking to me on this because that's my patron. He gave me
Oh,
that as my patron pick for July. Uh, now that's a little bit different. I'm not so much like I don't enjoy reading about American like historical like references like political and stuff like that, but like just general slice of life stuff I do enjoy.
I think you'd like 11/22/63, Chaz.
Okay,
It's
all right,
not it's more that.
yeah.
It's more slice of life. And there is, of course, that political
Mhm.
part to the plot, but it doesn't really delve into the politics per se.
Okay,
I mean, it's
well,
there, but it's not the focus as much.
yeah,
I
well
mean,
that's
it is, it is, and it isn't. I don't think it'll bother you though. I don't think it's what you think it is.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'll definitely see what it's like at some point. It's not high on my priority list, but I'll put it out there and see what I think of it.
Chaz
As far
patrons,
as
put it on the patron wheel for Chaz. Just kidding.
as far as Boys Life, I read the synopsis of that, and I've watched Baron's review and several other reviews, and so I'm definitely excited to read it for
Yeah,
sure.
well, that does go into American history, and it is slice of life. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well,
and it's wonderful. I'm really enjoying it so far.
okay.
I am actually past the halfway point. I'm just going through it very slowly because
Mhm,
with audiobooks, and it has nothing to do with the writing. The writing is excellent. It's just sometimes with audiobooks, I go through moods. So if I'm
mhm,
listening to an audiobook, sometimes I'm in an audiobook mood and I will just find things to do around the house just to listen to the audiobook.
mhm.
And then sometimes I'm listening to a fabulous audiobook, but I'm not in the headspace to listen to an audiobook and it really has nothing to do with the book.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's where I'm at with that book. I'm really enjoying it though. And the thing with The Boy's Life, I mean, you've already seen some reviews, but it's really well done. It's first person narration, 1964 Alabama, so it's in the South. You do
Mhm.
have the racism element there,
Mhm.
but I just love seeing from the perspective of this young boy coming of age sort of story. But at the same time, as these very dark and twisted things are happening and sort of the meaning he's making out of it, it's
Okay.
really, really interesting.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Yolene's here. Hello, hello.
Colleen, I had a wonderful time
Very
talking
nice
with
to
her
meet you.
last night. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw that you guys had been on the chat together. I
Yeah.
didn't get to watch it yet, but
I love Yolene. She's so
yeah,
awesome. She's
she
such a cool
is
person. And
awesome.
so is Nikki,
Yeah,
by
so
the
is
way.
Nikki. She's I had a great time with her on CHAS and
Yeah.
Friends a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Have a hard time with history as well in books, even though it would help me more in Jeopardy. Yeah, yeah, I would not do well in Jeopardy, that's for sure.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
like to escape to other worlds too. Yeah, that's and I think that's part of what maybe what American history doesn't necessarily do well for me is because I live in America. I really don't want to experience it over again.
I see. Yeah.
But I realize the value of it, and I'm willing to read books that are in that setting
Yeah.
if it feels like it'll click with me. So I'm excited about Boy's Life.
I'm more in mood to listen
Mhm.
to music for sure.
Get that. I will say that I almost DNF'd it way
Hmm.
back in the day, but the audiobook saved me.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I was able to finish it with the audiobook, but I just could not read the physical book. It
Yeah.
was um,
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't working for me, but the audio was perfect. So audio is really good for certain things. I use audio for most of my nonfiction books.
Hmm.
I just assimilate it better with audio because it's kind of like with podcasts.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, processing information is much easier for me with audio.
It's so different. Yeah, for sure. I definitely can relate to that. I've actually been listening to a lot more nonfiction this year than I have in a long time. And yeah, I really enjoy consuming it that way personally.
Yeah, yeah. You've had some great nonfiction
Mm,
recommendations.
yeah, there were some
So
great reads I had this year for sure.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you read
One
one of them. You read Altered Traits.
I did. I read Altered Traits and I quite enjoyed it. Not it didn't blow me away, but I really got a lot out of it still.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really good. I'm getting ready to probably in the next couple of months I'm going to fire up The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching by Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm
Hmm.
really excited to get to that one. I'm not Buddhist really, but I enjoy a lot of the Buddhist ideals, and Thich Nhat Hanh is one of my favorite
I love Thich Nhat Hanh. Yeah.
Buddhist philosophers and teachers. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. But yeah, I like really cerebral nonfiction books.
Yeah. Yeah. The
And
Altered Traits one is I know it's probably not going to appeal to everyone, but for me, it was actually I felt like it was perfectly suited to what I was wanting because I've been a meditator for many years, and as much as I could speak to my own experience, it's very anecdotal. So it really helps for me to hear what researchers have found because then we're actually pulling from data and just
mhm,
learning about the history. I know you're not a history person, but like the history of meditation and
mhm, yes.
how that's been sort of slowly accepted in basically in scientific circles
Hmm.
like where it is today versus where it was in the 60s and the authors and their backgrounds. And it was just, to me, all that was super fascinating too. Plus, just the data on empathy. I think that was my favorite part and attention, all those things. They're really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I do really like historical wise is philosophical history and how ideas have grown and changed over time. And even early American thinkers like Ralph Waldo Emerson and
Mm,
things like that. So yeah, that kind of stuff I do eat up. And uh, the progression of acceptance for meditation practices was really fascinating. I
yeah,
did. I loved that. And yeah, and I think it got really bogged down by the fact that so many people associate it with um uh so much with Eastern philosophy, which it is, but uh, a lot of the more Puritan circles of America tends to frown on anything from the East, and so
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
they want things to be as secular as possible. So I
Yeah.
think that the aim of the authors and the aim of a lot of research on mindfulness has been to make the practices as stripped down and secular as possible so that more people can benefit from it. And that makes sense to me. I mean, that's because otherwise it seems like you're pushing a religion on people.
It does.
And
Yeah.
but instead of saying this is a practice that can help your mind, help you in your relationship with self and others, help your attention skills, help your ability to relate to people. I think that all those things are important skills to have in life. And I love that because I don't feel like those are skills we teach in schools.
Yes,
Focus
I
on.
know.
We must.
There's some schools that are really paving the way for it, but uh, it's very much an exception rather than a rule. Not many schools do it, but some
Exactly.
schools are starting to forge that path, and I think that's excellent.
Yes, they
Because
are.
that as stressful as our modern times can be, I think that's foundational for kids to be able to learn those learn to use that as a coping skill.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's
yeah.
true. Hmm.
Yolene asked any nonfiction recommendations.
Yeah. Well, my favorite one that I read this year was Behave by
Hmm.
Sapolsky. So
Hmm.
that's human beings at their best and worst. And that is Sapolsky is a primatologist. So he studies primates basically. He studied primates in Kenya as well as a neurobiologist, I think, or neurologist. And so he studies obviously how neurology works with the brain. So what he did was he did this book Behave, and it's about human behavior, but human behavior as it's informed by not just one sphere, so not just evolution and how we've learned to behave based on evolution, but also on sociology, how societies affect our behavior, but also on the endocrine system, how hormones inform behavior, all on so many other aspects. And how, I mean, there are just, so the thing is, the book has many different ways that inform human behavior, psychology, everything. But rather than just sort of highlight one aspect, he synthesizes all these things to give
Hmm.
us a broader construct or understanding of human behavior and why we are the way we are, why we have war, why we have peace, why we can forgive people, why we can't, and whether we have any free will. So it kind of builds to that. Do we have free will as human beings? Interesting. And it's
Right.
brilliant. And it's also strongly about the ways in which we other people, the way we look at people in societies as being other than us in our inner
Hmm.
circle or out of our circle, and the things that affect that we think we know, but we really, there's so many different processes affecting that. So he really is taking he's looking at a lot of research and sort of bringing it together. It's not a
Hmm.
perfect book, and I'm sure there's been a lot of research since he wrote that book that maybe either dispels some of that research or that can be added to it. But the
Hmm.
problem with writing any sort of book on nonfiction, I think, is that, you know, the science is going to continue and evolve and all that. But I think it's a brilliant book for what it is. And I think he has an important message behind it. And so where he built the way he builds the foundation of information and where he takes it at the end, to me, was brilliant. It actually brought me to tears at one point too, towards
Hmm.
the end. So I thought it was a brilliant deep dive into human behavior. That was
That
my favorite
sounds
one.
right up my alley. Yeah, I remember watching your review and thinking, yeah, I need to add that to my nonfiction TBR.
Yeah, it's a big book, but the audiobook, I did listen to the audiobook. I loved the audiobook. I thought the audiobook was great. For me, it was like listening to NPR podcasts or something. I do know
Hmm.
somebody else, though. I felt kind of bad because somebody else in the community picked up the audiobook, probably, I think, because of my recommendation, and he hated it.
Oh
He
no.
DNF'd it. He DNF'd it pretty quickly and criticized the author, and I don't know, all these things. I kind of felt bad. So I don't
Yeah.
want to, I want to make sure I'm clear that there may be some other research out there. I don't know. I personally think it's really good. I know that the author is I think he has some pretty great credentials. You can look him up yourself if you're interested. And I know he has another book that's coming out either this year or next year on free will. And
Oh,
that one's
wow.
more focused on whether human beings have free will or not. This one does, though, and it does build towards that.
That sounds really, really good. Chadi, I think it's called Behave. Is that right?
It's called
Yeah.
Behave. I think it's called Behave Human Beings at Their Best and Worst. And the author's name is Sapolsky. So it's
Yeah.
SAP, I think it's OLSKY. I don't know. Sapolsky.
Yeah, yeah, that's looks like that's
Thank
what
you.
Jolene
Oh,
has
okay.
too.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
so
Jolene.
it does
Yeah.
sound fascinating.
I thought
Yeah.
it was fascinating. So I feel like I always have to give a disclaimer though, because I did, like I said, I do have one friend who picked it up and hated it. So
Yeah.
and I did double up with the audiobook and the physical book. I do think it helps to have the physical book, especially at the beginning, because he does give a lot of terms about the brain, different aspects of the brain and
Hmm.
cortical regions and things like that. But I think he explains it very well. And the book does give some images, not a lot. It does give some
Hmm.
imagery and it has some footnotes. And I think Sapolsky is hilarious, by the way. The author, he is so funny. I thought. So he has some hilarious footnotes in the book.
Oh, that's great to know.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely check it out, and sounds like a few other people here are going to check it out too.
Yeah.
Um, I think my recommend. Well, I have several that I could recommend, but one that I really got a lot out of was Why We Sleep
Oh,
by
yeah.
Matthew
Mhm.
Walker. That's a really great book, and Ariana Huffington has a book on sleep that's actually really good as well. I've listened to both of those on audio, and yeah, hers is more experiential. So her experience with sleep and how important it is, and she talks about the studies and stuff that have been done as well. But Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker is very much more uh, informational than experiential.
Hmm.
So, uh, so if you want to get both the experiential and the informational, I would highly recommend reading both of those books, maybe one right after the other, even because yeah, they're both really good. But it made me more aware of my own personal sleep practices and where I can make changes that will benefit my mental health and physical health more. And sometimes you can't avoid losing sleep, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you can put practices into place that will help you find ways to get better sleep, it's good. So yeah, those are great books.
Yeah. I've heard fantastic things about Why We Sleep, but I'm so anxious to read it because, like you said, but I like that you gave the second recommendation because I'm afraid I read that and just feel worse about not sleeping enough.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. I actually I would actually be sitting there listening to it, and I'm like, oh well, that's a slap in the face, and
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I realize things that I probably shouldn't be doing that are causing me to have less restful sleep.
It really is so important for sleep hygiene, and I know I've heard
Hmm.
before that dementia, Alzheimer's, those are things that develop not within a short time. They actually develop over years and years. And
Hmm.
sometimes and sleep is a huge factor
It is.
in those kinds of diseases. So
Hmm.
it could definitely, I think, exacerbate any sort of genetic predisposition or well, I don't know about that, but
Yeah. Oh,
it
yeah,
can affect
I
things.
totally
It can really
understand.
affect that. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely can, and reading a lot helps with those things too. Keeping your mind active, but sleep plays a major part in so many aspects of our life.
Yeah.
Yeah, the amount of sleep and the quality of sleep can. I know if I get 6 hours or less of sleep, usually if I get at least 6.5 or 7, I'm pretty good. But if I get less than that, I can always tell that I'm just not on my game. And
Mhm.
those are usually the days that I end up not reading as much either, which I found interesting.
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely have a harder time if I'm not sleeping as well to concentrate on what I'm reading.
Hmm. Do you read before bed at all?
I have lately, and that's not been a good habit. I don't think it's a good habit for me because then I stay up too late, but
Oh.
because I find for me, and I've not been doing this lately, but I find for me, I get my best sleep if I am in bed by 9:30. I
Oh,
know
okay,
that's
yeah.
really early for a lot of people, but
Hmm.
I've always been my body always naturally wants to be a morning person. I can
Mm,
force it to be a night person, but I don't think it likes it. It doesn't like it. And
right.
so if I get my best reading when I get up early and do it before breakfast. So
Oh,
that's
wow,
kind of
that's good.
and I'm weird. So I do read on the treadmill. I read while walking on the treadmill, and I usually like to read ebooks for that reason. So I read walking on the treadmill or on the exercise bike. And my
Hmm.
goal is to try to get a very slow pace for both of those things. I'm not doing it necessarily to burn calories or anything. I do it because it's easier for my spine because I get tense very
Mm,
easily. And if I sit, I notice I get a lot of problems. So if I'm moving when I read, it just helps the oxygen flow. So it helps me think a little bit better and it helps
hmm.
me sleep better if I get some movement in the day.
Hmm.
And so that's important. And I'm reading, so it helps me track my reading.
Yeah,
I feel like it benefits me in multiple ways if I do some kind of movement when I read.
that sounds really good. Yeah,
Mhm.
I can understand how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Um, I do read a little bit before bed, but it really relaxes me. So I make sure that I'm all ready to go. I'm in bed and I pick up my book and I'll usually read for maybe a half an hour, sometimes less, or maybe a little bit more. But I usually start nodding and I'm like, okay, now I'm
Yeah.
ready for sleep. But everybody's experience is a little bit different on that. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I read, I think probably if I read during the day or in the morning, I retain things so much better too. If I read right before I go to
Hmm.
sleep, I've noticed that in the morning I have to kind of make sure I remember. I always realize I forget things. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I've found that when I do read before bed, I usually dream about it, so that helps. But then
that
I
sometimes happens to me too.
But then I don't always remember my dreams, so that's a problem too. But
Mm,
yeah,
yeah,
Yuli needs 8 hours of sleep. Yeah,
yeah,
that's ideal. That's actually 8 hours of sleep is the ideal. So I get you there.
yeah. And that's hard to do, but really
Mhm.
helpful, especially if you're doing a lot of work. I know I've definitely gone through times in my life where I think I've just really operated more on caffeine than anything, and I don't really do that as much anymore. I drink tea, green tea, but
Yeah, that's my only well, other than chocolate, I like a piece of
I love
chocolate every now and
chocolate.
again, but other than that, tea is mine too. I don't I haven't had coffee in almost 2 years, I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
used to live off coffee,
I
and
did
I
too.
love it, and I kind of miss it, but I just it's so bad for my sleep. Even if I
Yeah.
drink it early in the day, part of me kind of is tempted to try it again, but I know that what's going to happen because if I drink it, one, my blood sugar spikes and goes crazy, and I get in
Mhm.
a bad mood. It's bad.
Yeah.
And then two is that I'll wake up at 3 in the morning wide awake. Even if I fall
Oh,
asleep
wow.
on time, I'll wake up in the middle of the night just wide awake. That's how
Yeah.
caffeine affects me. So it's not a good thing.
Yeah, sounds like it's best that you switch to tea and
Mhm. Yeah,
'cause it yeah.
much, much better on my system for sure. By the way, speaking of coffee,
Mhm.
have you read Legends and Lattes?
I have not yet. It is I was going to so I have an elective slot for this month, and I was going to fit Legends and Lattes in, but then some things came up, and I'm just not gonna be able to get to it, and next month, I'm pretty packed, but I am gonna try and get to it soon. Yeah.
You can get through that. I promise you can get through that in a day or 2.
I've
It's so
heard
short.
that.
It's
Yeah.
very short. I doubled with the audiobook, so I actually read it in a day, and I never do that. But it is
Mhm.
so delightful. It is the most delightful read I've
Yeah.
read this year. It's wonderful. I think you'd love it, Chaz. I could see you loving it. I really can.
Oh, I can definitely too, and I've seen so many good reviews on it, and I loved your reaction when I said no. You're like, no.
It's another
I,
Chaz book.
I
I really think
I
it
think
could be a Chaz
Jonathan did. I think Jonathan got that too. He liked your reaction.
book. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Jeremy's gonna read it
Jeremy, you
soon.
would love
Cool.
Legends and Lattes. I think Jeremy would love it too. I think
Yeah.
that should definitely be, everyone needs to read it. It's so cozy. It is so cute and cozy. Yes,
Yeah, it definitely appeals to me from everything that I've seen about it.
I
So
just I hate overhyping books, and I'm sorry if I'm doing that for Legends and Lattes, everybody. So if you feel kind of disappointed, then I'm sorry. Yes, it is. Well, it was
it
self-published, but
was
Tor
self-pub.
recently picked it up. Both
Yep.
UK Tor and US Tor picked it up. So
And from what I understand, they are keeping the cover art the same with the exception of the font. I
that's
think they
right.
changed the font a little bit, but
Yeah.
other than that, they're keeping the cover, which is awesome because I wouldn't change the cover at all.
No, it's perfect. And yeah,
Yeah.
they have a quote from some author I can't remember right now, but it is it is so delightful. I think you're going to really enjoy it. I think so. The thing about it is, I think like what I've said about this book, what I think its charm is that it's exactly what he says it is. It's a low stakes slice of life type of book.
Mm-hmm.
And in what I think is so amazing about that is that for self-published fantasy authors, you know how hard they have to work to get their books to
Oh
sell.
yeah, I sure do.
So what are they all doing? They're going as dark and twisted and subverted and epic and grand scale as they possibly can to make their book as unique and just as extraordinary as possible. He does
Mm-hmm.
totally the opposite.
Yeah,
He
he
scales back.
subverted it. Yeah,
He
that's
scales
good.
back and makes it a cozy slice of life. But at the same time, it's not that it's totally superficial and shallow either. I mean, there is some depth there. It's just not
Mm-hmm.
as heavy. And it's still relatable. It's still well written. I think the writing is good, very good quality.
Yeah.
And it's delightful. It's not about trying to make you have this. So, I was talking about Abercrombie a while ago. And I
Uh-huh.
said, as much as I love Abercrombie and I find him thoroughly entertaining, he's never somebody who's going to make me fill me with inspiration and wonder and grandeur, or
Mm-hmm.
the feeling of the sublime. That's not why I read Abercrombie. But that's
Mm-hmm.
not why you should read Legends and Lattes either. You should read it because you just want something that's kind of cute and cozy. And
Mm-hmm.
he delivers that. So
Well,
I
I
definitely,
definitely like cute and cozy.
yeah.
I need more of that in my life for sure. Yeah.
And I honestly don't. I am not usually a cute and cozy kind of reader, but this particular book just for some reason spoke to me. And the whole combination of coffee shop and
Mm-hmm.
fantasy was very perfectly suited to me because I grew up going to coffee shops all the time. I was a coffee shop hopper when I was younger with a
Yeah.
group of friends who were really into fantasy. So my mind associates fantasy and coffee shop together. That was why I thought, oh, this book is perfect. And it was. So
Well, that's cool.
yeah,
Speaking of cute and cozy books, have you ever read House in the Cerulean Sea?
I haven't for that reason because
Oh,
the
yeah.
whole cute and cozy thing doesn't appeal to me at all.
Yeah.
But it was just a very specific case with Legends and Lattes. But I have heard
Okay.
great things about the House of the Cerulean Sea.
Yeah, it's just an absolutely beautiful, fun. Uh, yeah, it's. I love that book. Yeah, my daughter just finished reading it too, and she absolutely fell in love with it, like I did. It's a great book. It was one of my favorite books of last year.
Oh, yeah,
But yeah, cute and cozy isn't always for everyone. It has to be a certain type of a book to appeal for that particular. I guess I wouldn't call it a genre, but a particular type of book anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned that you have some back problems.
I
Like,
do. Yeah. Yeah, well, not all the time. I don't feel them all the time. You know, like right
Hmm.
now I feel fine. I
Hmm.
probably need to get up and move here in a bit, but as long as I keep moving and I stay on my
Hmm.
feet most of the time, I actually have a standing desk here.
Nice.
I'm pretty good, but which is also why I move while I read. But
Uh-huh.
if I spend a lot of time like driving or sitting, and I'm kind of nervous about this because I have a big road trip coming up soon with
Oh,
my
wow.
husband. And he
Yeah.
wanted us to drive 11 and a half hours in a day, and I'm like, "I don't think I could do it."
Oh, yeah, that's a
I just don't think I
rough
could do it.
drive.
Because, yeah, I did have a car accident many years ago, and as a result, I didn't really feel it a ton after the accident, even though it was a pretty crazy accident. I didn't feel it a ton after that, but years later, it came,
Mhm.
and it came with a vengeance. So, I went through a year where I was going through kind of back sprains where I
Mhm.
just wake up and I just move my head a certain way and boom, I'd get like a strain down, like I'd get kind of like a stiff neck. And
Mhm.
so I do deal with that. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen for as often anymore. Fortunately, it was pretty bad a couple of years ago. And actually, it started happening when I started getting really into reading again. So
Oh,
I started
interesting, because 'cause
putting
you're constantly looking down at,
probably,
yeah.
I think that might have been it because I was spending a lot of hours sitting and reading. And I think
Mhm.
that was what started to cause it. And so I went to physical therapy. I know how to deal with it now, and I know when it happens not to freak out and how to work with it.
Mhm.
But yeah, like a few weeks ago, I did have some mild neck strain, and so part of that also. So there are a lot of factors with that. One is the accident, but another one is that I just recently went to the optometrist because I found out that I needed to go to the optometrist. I was having some eye strain. And it was funny because the new lenses I got, the way they're advertised, and I don't know if this is an overblown claim, but apparently they're supposed to be, they've been clinically tested to improve neck strain and
Oh.
dizziness. And I was having a little bit of vertigo whenever
Mhm.
I'd have the neck strain. So it's all interconnected, all that part of the body. So I
Mhm.
have had new glasses and I try not to wear them when I'm in videos, but I will do them when I'm in a long discussion because I know I get a glare and it drives me crazy if I see that. But,
Yeah.
um, but I can go some periods without them, but I do need to wear them most of the time. And I have noticed it does seem to have improved. So I do think that
That's
maybe
good.
some of the neck strain could be coming from like trying to focus and maybe pulling my head forward or something. So a lot of factors there.
Yeah, there are a lot of factors there. You and I have a very similar experience there, because I was in a car accident many
Mm,
years ago, didn't feel it right away, but over time it got worse. And I did get some physical therapy at the time, but it wasn't enough to really prevent the long-term ramifications. So I have I have what the chiropractors, they always tell me, "Oh yeah, you've got straight neck.
uh-huh.
My neck doesn't curve the way it's supposed to." But yeah, it can be really debilitating. And I was having like a lot of things similar to you, like a neck sprain, and I would wake up. Uh, it got to the point where I just couldn't get a restful night's sleep on regular mattresses. But I have been sleeping on a Japanese futon for the last 2.5 or 3 years on the floor. My almost all of my back pain and back issues are gone.
Wow.
I get slight flare ups every now and again, but I mean slight. It's very minimal compared to what I used to get, and it's maybe, once or twice a year at most. And it's just, sleeping on the floor has just, I mean, it can't do that for everyone, but my experience has been it almost cured my back issues.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And that,
So
it's so important to find the right kind of mattress. My
it is.
husband and I, we have a sleep number. So I don't know if you
Mhm.
know what that is. It's where
Mhm.
you can adjust the firmness or softness of the mattress with like a
Mhm.
control. And it's
Yeah.
cool because you can do different sleep numbers on my husband's side has a different sleep number than my side because he sleeps on his stomach. I don't know. I don't know how he does it. But we have different sleep numbers. So we're able to adjust the mattress softness and firmness for our specific needs. And
Yeah.
that actually helped me a ton as well. But yeah, that's amazing about the Japanese futon.
Yeah. And we had a sleep number at one point, and I just it didn't work for me. Like no mattresses worked. We after a while we replaced it with a Tempur-Pedic.
Hmm.
Same thing. I just could not. I couldn't sleep with a Tempur-Pedic. But sleeping on the floor, boy, it
Yeah.
it it almost fixed everything. I'm probably about maybe 95% better than I ever was
Oh, that's amazing.
back wise. Yeah, it's I still, I mean, you still have to make some adjustments. I put a foam roll under my knees
Me too.
to keep my
Mhm.
back in alignment, and I sleep on a neck roll to try and keep my neck curved appropriately. Uh, and I still end up, rolling on my side from time to time during the night, uh, but it still works. It's been great for me, but
Yeah.
not everyone can do that or is able to do that. Yeah, my friend Mona Lisa, she that would never work for her probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, she and I have talked quite a bit about her back pain, and uh, yeah,
Getting
and
the right physical therapist can make a big difference
it
too.
can, yeah, it really can. Getting the appropriate care for it is huge.
Yeah, my physical therapist, he's really interesting. I actually met him through meditation. We used to meditate
Hmm.
together, and then later on, I found out, oh, you're a physical therapist. I should go see you. And so I
Hmm.
did. And he's amazing because he does this sort of technique where he can, like, with his hands, he does it a very specific way. Like, not everyone can do it. I don't know. Where he
Hmm.
can sort of move and check how far forward you can go this way, this
Hmm.
way, this way, this way in a very specific way. So like I could force myself to the side, but he does it
Hmm.
in a way that it happens either naturally or not. He's like, "Oh, that's locked, that's locked." And then he'll have you go through these very specific little exercises and they're so subtle. They're these little tiny movements. And then he does it and you're like flopping back and forth. It's the craziest thing.
Interesting.
Apparently he's one of the only people in the world who can do that.
Huh.
According to somebody else he works with who told me that. So it's a very specific kind of training, but yeah, it's very unfortunate. I have a lot of compassion for anybody who has any sort of physical issue because I've had them.
I do
I've had
too.
issues with my neck. I've had issues. I've had a hernia repair before. I've had knee issues before. I've had a lot of injuries. I've had a lot of
Oh
stuff.
wow.
So I can understand pain. I understand.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it looks like for Chadia, it's neck and shoulders as
Yeah.
well, and yeah, yeah, it's not fun, and I mean, if you get the right chiropractor, even it can
Mm.
be good. But I've had good chiropractors, and then I had one chiropractor I went to that just did like, but before I started sleeping on the floor, I had a really bad flare up and I went to a chiropractor, and they just made it worse. It was
Oh, wow.
awful. So I haven't been back to a chiropractor since then, although I'm open to, but I don't really feel like I need to right now. I feel like I'm in a good place. So
That's good. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Really important. Those kinds of things, they really impact our reading lives.
Yeah, absolutely. They sure do. And yeah, being readers with our, constantly looking down at books, it's important to find things that work for our back health and
Yeah.
things. So back and neck. And speaking of that too, I know we've been going about an hour and 45 minutes. I want to check in, uh, see how you're doing with that, and I know you like to get up and move around. So if you feel like this is a good place to end, we can do that. If you want to go a few minutes more, I'm fine with that too. How you feeling there, Joanna?
Yeah. I think I'm good. I think was there anything else you wanted to chat about before closing it off, or did you have any
I
other talking points or anything?
I think I'm good. Yeah, I didn't really come with a plan. I just knew I was gonna enjoy talking with my good friend Joanna. So that's the only
Oh,
plan I had. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
and if anybody else has any questions that you want to pop up before we end, I think I think this is probably a good place to end. But I'll give it a couple more minutes here. I really have enjoyed this talk. I love we got through quite a variety of topics actually.
We did. Yes,
So
we did.
yeah,
Absolutely.
so it was a lot of fun, and everybody watching it, I think probably most everybody has watched Johanna or is subscribed to Johanna. But if you're not, and especially if you're catching this after the live stream on the replay, make sure you subscribe and check Johanna out. She's just a joy to watch and interact with, and you're always so thoughtful with your responses to comments, Johanna. It's just, yeah, I really enjoy um, I really enjoy you on the BookTube community. It's
Aw,
amazing.
thank you so much, Chaz. Well, it's been
Yeah.
such a pleasure to hang out with you this afternoon, and I hope we could do it again sometime. Had a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. I had mentioned at one point to someone that I'm hoping to do Chaz and Friends remixes from time to time. Get two or three of my guests on a chat for a replay
That
and
would be
do
so
it
fun.
again.
Yeah, count me
Yeah,
in if you ever want to do that.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I will definitely approach you when that time comes, because it's a lot of fun. You know, kind of like Steve's Friday conversations that over at Steve Talks Books.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
just
know, yeah, you and Steve have that kind of informal thing going on with the chats, and they're so much fun. I really enjoy those. I really enjoy just these sort of informal, see where it goes kind of conversations because I don't know, they're just so much fun. They're just like it's almost like having coffee with a friend. It's like
yeah, it
I used
really
to go to
is.
I used to go out for coffee all the time. That was like my main socializing
Hmm.
way of socializing. And so
Me
this
too.
kind of brings me back to those days in a way. Just, whatever comes up. And it's always fun to hear the chat and how they're contributing to the conversation. So I love the live format too.
Yeah, I like it too. It's a lot of fun, and you interact with so many great people. Like Chadia, thank you so much.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank you
you.
so
And
much, Chadia. I'm glad to know
looks
how
like
to
I
pronounce.
Anonymous popped in here for a minute, so thank you for joining us.
Thank
But
you so much.
yeah. Well, yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Make sure you read more books, and I'll see you again. I do have another guest on Chaz and Friends tomorrow, actually at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and Mountain Time. I'm gonna have Alyssa from Into the Heart Wild on the channel, so I'm very excited to chat with her. So I'll see you again tomorrow, everybody. Until
Wonderful.
then,
Yay. We'll see you
have
all
a
soon.
great day.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.